Wi-Fi feels simple because it's done a really good job of hiding everything. You open an app, it works, and your brain takes the rest of the day off. But behind that moment is a system that's constantly sending tiny pieces of information back and forth, politely waiting its turn, and hoping your neighbor isn't doing the same thing at the exact same time. It's not complicated in a scary way. It's complicated in a, why is this allowed to work at all kind of way. Every time you do something online, your device reacts like, cool, I'll tell everyone. You tap a video, refresh a feed, accidentally open something you didn't mean to, and your phone immediately sends out a request saying, basically, I need this right now. But instead of sending one big confident message, it panics a little and chops that request into tiny pieces called data packets, small enough to manage, small enough to lose without causing a scene. Each of those packets is just ones and zeros, which sounds abstract until you realize that's the only language computers speak. There's no images or sound yet, just very committed yeses and nos. Your phone then takes that binary data and quietly reshapes radio waves, stretching them, squishing them, making them wiggle in very specific ways to carry those bits through the air. All of this happens on a specific frequency band, like 2.4 gigahertz, which is just a fancy way of saying, this is the lane we're using so everything doesn't crash into everything else immediately. Which brings us to the router, the small plastic box that lives in your house and acts way more important than it looks. Its entire job is to receive those tiny packets and decide where they're supposed to go next, without getting emotionally involved. Once it gets your request, it sends it off to your internet service provider, who then passes it along to the actual server that has what you want. So if you're watching a video, that request eventually reaches a server somewhere that says, oh, you want this? Sure. And starts sending the data back the exact same way. Broken up, binary, and extremely fast. Those packets travel back through your ISP, into your router, and finally to your phone, which patiently waits until enough pieces arrive to make sense of them. Then it reassembles everything into a video, complete with sound, color, and the illusion that this was always meant to happen smoothly. The entire round trip takes milliseconds, which is impressive considering how many chances there are for something to go wrong, and how often it still works anyway. Of course, none of this works if your phone doesn't even know who it's talking to in the first place. So when you turn on Wi-Fi, your device immediately starts scanning the area like it just walked into a crowded room. The list of networks you see are just names, SSIDs, which means your phone recognizes that something is there, not that it understands it. When you pick one, the router and your device go through a brief, quiet agreement that mostly involves trust and a password you typed once and never again. At that point, the router assigns your phone an IP address. This is basically your phone's temporary name tag, so the router knows which incoming packets belong to you and not someone else streaming something equally important in the next room. It's not glamorous, but without that step, all the data would just show up confused, with no idea where to go. This is where Wi-Fi stops being polite and starts managing traffic, because the air around you isn't empty. It's crowded with signals from your own devices, your neighbor's devices, and at least one printer that hasn't worked correctly since 2016. To keep things from collapsing immediately, each frequency band is split into channels. Think of them as shared lanes where only one device can talk at a time, while everyone else waits and pretends they're fine with it. When your phone is sending data, everything else pauses briefly, then takes its turn, then pauses again. Most of the time this happens so fast, you never notice. But when too many devices try to speak at once, or too many networks are packed into the same space, you start to feel it. Pages load slowly, videos buffer, and everyone collectively blames the router, even though it's doing its best. And this is where everything you've just heard becomes slightly unsettling, because none of this is happening through wires. Wi-Fi works by using radio waves, which are invisible, long, and very good at passing through walls without asking permission. They're related to light, just stretched out so far you can't see them, which makes them perfect for quietly filling your home with information. Your data is constantly moving through the air, bouncing off walls, furniture, and people, adjusting as it goes, hoping it reaches the right device before something else interrupts it. And somehow, despite all of that, it usually arrives exactly where it's supposed to. Which is why Wi-Fi feels simple. Not because it is, but because it's extremely good at hiding how much work it's doing. So in the end, Wi-Fi isn't really about speed or bars or whether the router is in the right room. It's more about how much invisible work we're willing to ignore as long as things mostly function. Most of us don't think about it until it stops. And even then, we're surprised it ever worked at all. There's something kind of funny about relying so completely on systems we never see, never question, and only remember when they fail. And once you notice that pattern, it starts to show up in other places too, in ways that have nothing to do with technology, like how everything can feel weirdly stressful all the time, even when nothing is actively going wrong, which is probably worth thinking about next, if you're already here, just continuing the thought.